Alright, so I took this trade today based on this 8:30 news release. Going into the session, I was somewhat bullish because we ran out these lows on daily chart. We took these lows and we closed inside, right? So we have a candle closure in this range. We should expect to go above this, right, into this order block. That was the initial assessment going into this session, to the New York session on January 14th, 2025. But what actually happened, we ended up having an 8:30 news release, right? So we had news at 8:30, and let's see, here's the economic calendar. We had Tuesday, 8:30 PPI, right? So what happened was, if you look at a half an hour chart, so initially, New York or London did not reverse from this point of interest here for me to take long. That was one invalidation of this New York AM session, right? Nonetheless, New York AM session could have run into this point of interest. And if you look at this point of interest on my private notes here, this is where the point of interest is. Now, the point of interest, if New York was to reverse from here, we would have seen a sharp drop, right? Drop into this area, followed by change in state of delivery for us to go long in. Well, we had an 8:30 news today. If we're going to have any drop, meaningful drop, we should have dropped here by 8:30. Now, on top of that, once it dropped, I would have expected some type of an SMT here for me to go long in, right? SMT, change in state of delivery from point of interest for us to go long. But what happened at 8:30? What happened at 8:30 was the fact that there was no manipulation prior to 8:30. At 8:30 news release, we manipulated higher, right? Now, how do I know that this is a manipulation? Because NASDAQ failed to go above this high and we closed 9:30 this way, or 8:30 candle closure this way, right? So that kind of prompted me that this was the manipulation there. So from there, I anticipated that since this is a high probability candle here, right? I anticipated that the midpoint to be a very responsive zone, right? So then I measured the midpoint of this and I waited for the midpoint of that wick to be engaged. Now we engaged that wick at 9:30, and the way we engaged it is what was interesting, because this is 9:30 open here, right? So prior to 9:30 open, we had not engaged that midpoint of that wick. At 9:30, we engaged that wick, right? And so this was the manipulation here, 9:30 manipulation in my eyes, for us to move down in, right? So since we're above this, this is still a manipulation here. Price should not come up here, right? And so if you're going to be a protective stop will still go above here, right? For me, the way I looked at it was, on 3-minute chart, we engaged that midpoint. We had a change in state of delivery there. We had a change in state of delivery, and we had a low movement lower, right? So because we had changed the state of delivery, I felt pretty comfortable putting my stop up here. Another reason I put my stop up here was the fact that there was an SMT here. This was a equal high or lower high, versus on NASDAQ, we had a higher high. So there was another level of comfort there, knowing that I can put my stop loss there. So, and then if you were to enter short right at that closure, right, and you would have protected stop loss 1 to 2. My entry was higher that candle, so I was able to take profit at this candle here at 957 candle. So I waited for me to go up into that, the movement up, and my protective stop was up here. That gives me 1 to 2 point, I think it was 2.1 was my exact risk to reward ratio. Nonetheless, 1 to 2 is a risk to reward. I hit it at 957, right? 10 o'clock, we can expect some type of movement up for us to go down in. And if I didn't get this fill, I probably would have had to wait all this to movement down to get my fill on the take profit. So the idea again was the fact that we manipulated SMT here So we should not be going up. Best case scenario, we should be going down. Worst case scenario, we should be consolidating, right? And midpoint of that wick was the sensitive area. 930 gave us that sensitive area fulfilled, followed by a candle closure in that range and exchange state of delivery at 945 candle. 948, we wait for it to enter up, we take it down. So this is the paper trading account that I took the trade in, and this is obviously this is a paper trading account, and I'm only going to be trading paper trading account for my journaling purposes. So basically, here's the trade that I took this morning. My entry was up here somewhere. Stop loss was here. This is the trade that I took. But what can we learn from this trade? Well, we learned that SMT plays a major role, right? What else did we learn from this trade? Well, we could have been a little bit more aggressive with our take profit, and the reason is because if you measure this manipulation, right? If you measure this manipulation to the lower, you can see that we could have held our trade up until this 2.5, right? This 2.5 aligns with our point of interest here that I measured out on my notes, and the exact hit would be 1230, right? If we were to hold on to that. But nonetheless, if you go down to a lower time frame chart, and instead of holding it on, let's say taking it 1 to 2, which I did here, if you were to hold this trade for longer, so let's say we entry was here at 2, it would have been 1 to 2.74, and around at 2.5, it would be at 3.4. So 1 to 3.4, 1 to 2 plus are your possible risk to reward ratio there, and that's what we can learn. I forgot to measure out this manipulation leg here on 30-minute chart, right? And then another way to, so that was the 830 manipulation that I measured out previously. But if you measure out the 930 manipulation, so this was the 830 manipulation here. So now let's measure out the 930 manipulation. 930 manipulation higher. This this is from 930 higher. If you measure out that manipulation there, so highest high to the low here, you would have had 2 again around 1140 or so, 2.5 at 1157, and obviously it goes deeper, right? So if you were to, based on that, if you were to learn from those type of exits, so you would have been at 1 to 4.25, and then 1 to 5, and then if you left a runner or so into your point of interest, it would have been 1 to 5.7, right? So that's that. So what do we learn based on our point of interest here? So this is the morning trade that I was looking for. I was looking for this setup. So I was looking for the setup to take place in New York AM session. So obviously the New York AM session did not give us the long here. But when we study the long, what do we see? So we do take our point of interest comes in, right? Remember the initial bias was that we were going to push up higher into this order block here, right? We have a candle closure within this previous down close candle, so we can expect to move higher. That was our initial bias, right? Now, because the daily profile is either London reverses or New York AM session reverses, right? Well, New York AM session, we're all the way up here, right? So there's no way we're going to be reversing from down here. So the New York AM session can give us a sell here, which I took. Now, the New York PM session, if it were to come down here, we can look to buy above here, right? So again, we look at how we came down here with a down close candle, closer above. This becomes bullish, we can enter here. If we were to measure out this manipulation, first I'd like to see if there's any type of divergence with NQ. And NQ, there's some divergence here, right? So you have 12 o'clock, 1230 lower, right? Same thing with ES, 12 o'clock, 1230 is lower. So right away, I probably wouldn't be able to take this trade, right? But let's say I do enter. How would I enter? So I would have entered as soon as there's a change in state of delivery with this candle. So I would have entered somewhere around here. long position. So here, enter here, stop loss there. Let's say you entered there, right? And 1 to 2, you would have still hit profit. You would have still taken profit here, but you did not have that SMT as your confirmation there. So nonetheless, you have a change in state of delivery. And I want to see if this low, 1218 low from NQ, yeah, it's still lower low. So same thing. I would like to manipulate, see measurement lower. So this lower was the manipulation. So if you were to measure that, somewhere around here, 2.5, you would have hit in profit. Let's say you measured this leg, so low, lower, low, this up close candle, that's a breaker if you measure that, right? If you were to measure this breaker here, you would have hit 2.5, and then 4 would never have been reached. So what I learned from this was that fact that my point of interest was correct. I was able to do that correctly. I was able to read the market in the sense that I saw this SMT divergence here, and I was able to read that 830 manipulation here, and I was able to capitalize on the short. Some of the mistakes that I made was the fact that I did not measure out this movement here for a measure move lower, and I also did not anticipate that since it's dropping down, it can come into this point of interest there, which kind of aligns with this order block here, right? So it kind of aligns with that order block there, and I did not anticipate that for us to come into. If I was to anticipate that, I would have been a little bit more aggressive with my take profit and holding it for a little bit longer.